Excellent. Thank you all. And that's a perfect segue because I do think that the action that we took during the class, and certainly the action that we have all taken since that class experience, is a really powerful action or outcome of this program. And it is also, it's kind of the mine of what we have to offer. It is this valuable resource. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about those team projects and your experience, the kind of interactions that you had. I guess I see it as an opportunity to kind of go out while you're learning and have that interaction with members of the community and try and get things done. And clearly, part of that metaphor is, it's difficult and, don't judge people and all those things. But I think you see that firsthand when you do the team projects. So I guess I'd like to hear, and we don't have to go around the table, you can just sort of chime in. But tell us about your team project experience, maybe some, if you know where your team project is today, if it lived on. I know there are some that are still living on.
Well, I think for me, the difficulty with the team project was that I didn't feel there was really a connection, direct connection with a need in the community that somebody had brought forward. And I don't know if that's changed over the years, but that was kind of my take, that it wasn't like, a nonprofit, let's say, had come and said, okay, we have this project we'd like you folks to work on. So I really didn't feel like we were maybe using our talents and energy towards something that really was particularly needed.
Mm-hmm. And what was your team project?
We actually did a history of immigration in Madison.
Wow.
It was really interesting, and we did it because we felt like it was a good learning and teaching experience. But there was nothing really practical in the sense of somebody who really needed it.
Did you partner with someone to do that? Like, it wasn't a request from someone? Okay.
At the time we did it, there wasn't a request for a partnership with
okay.
an organization to do our projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Others?
Lynn, I have been sitting here struggling to remember what the project was.
That happens as we go.
It was very memorable.
So obviously you can live through, and having had a colleague who went through LGM recently, I don't know which, last class.
Yes,
so
she's
19. And hearing her struggles throughout the year and, the challenges with the project. And I said, in the end, I think the important part was coming up with, it was the team building, it was the exploring of an issue and building those relationships. But I truly don't remember what the project was. So it's an exercise.
I remember thinking that we were being led through these steps for that purpose rather than for making a difference in the community. And I thought it was a little disingenuous of the program coordinators that they didn't clue us into that. And
that was the goal, was to have you go through the exercise.
well, yeah, that would really be the outcome rather than changing the world. So I think we were led to believe, okay, you've had 8 months or whatever at that gestation and you're ready to deliver this baby called the project. And this baby is going to change the world rather than getting there is what's going to change the world. That kind of, as Kathleen Falk told you, that you'll be the ones who decide that. And so I suppose I remember going through that thinking, they don't really want to tell us that until the end. They don't want to help us understand, this is the script, this is the screenplay, this is the intent. You're playing out this role, and at the end, it's not very important what you recommend or what you implement, but that you got there.
Did you find your experience as you were going through it, even though you were a little sidetracked with that, was the experience, did you make interesting connections that you didn't have? Or did you try something that you hadn't tried? Well, you've done everything and you know everybody, so I guess maybe that's that's perhaps not a good question.
Well, I think for me, what evolved was more of the value of interaction with those individuals on my team, rather than the substance of the project. And that's what I remember more than the substance of the project, because that substance has evaporated. It isn't that we can't remember it, Dora. It's that it's evaporated.
Well, I remember mine, because it was my idea. So ours was to create low-cost advertising for arts organizations. So we wanted to have it so you didn't have to buy a big ad, you could buy a little ad, and a bunch of groups would collaborate and have just a little kind of thing. So we worked with the Isthmus, and they ended up, and I also invented the internet too. So
Was Al Gore on your team?
So as part of the daily page, it's a low-cost way. We were working with groups on how to get just enough information, and we worked with the State Journal folk. We made a difference. We tried to make a difference. And even though I understand Ken was trying to kind of mess with our heads, we wanted to make, because some of the other groups didn't know what they were doing, and that was okay.
So did anybody else feel that their project made a difference?
I feel like, at least in our little corner of the world, we changed a fair amount. So Tammy and I were in the same group. She mentioned that essentially we ended up focusing on technology related to elementary education. And so we ended up ultimately partnering with Frank Allison and Western Window Schools in the same building, and they had these sort of old, beat up, barely functioning computer labs. And we sort of said, okay, well, we raised some money, and we got some partners and things like that, and some training to go with these new netbooks and mobile cartridge with wireless. We're like, well, that's great, that's good. We survived, we got through the year. And we've got invited back to sort of see what had become of that. That school took our little mini Carter 5 netbooks and used their ARA money to replace all their labs. Complete arts for every floor. There was stairs, no elevators.
And so it just sort of changed how they could basically roll the lab into the classroom. And the kids could then do their research, and do their reading, and do everything like that in those rooms. It was just really cool. It's just really cool to say, okay, we really changed that. And assuming the school district maintains it, it's going to be there until technology changes again. So, great.
Peter?
Our group was, we call ourselves the Change Agents. And our project was entitled Towards a Greener Bottom Line. And, that was when sustainability was just starting to kind of take hold in our community. But we thought,
wouldn't it be a great idea to pull together business leaders who have made a commitment towards sustainability in their various businesses, bring them together and actually have an event where they speak about what they've done and invite the whole community in. And we had leaders from Organic Valley, MCD, Home Savings Bank, Arbor, the Arbor Inn, and it was great. And it was I think our group, because our group was an interdisciplinary group, we had an architect, so we had a credit union executive, an accountant, and we weren't always doing something that was within our comfort zone, within our role that we typically had. But it was to me, it was a really positive experience, both interdisciplinary within our group and also the group of speakers that we brought in too. We got exposed to this whole range of business types who were in their own right passionate about sustainability and how sustainability and being greener also in terms of the bottom line, the color of money, those can coexist. So that was a really positive experience for us.
I like Oscar. We have to get to know each other because as he invented the internet by LGM 10, my oldest would have been 11, and our group all had kids in about that late elementary, middle school age where computers, as in computers, were available in the homes, probably not in school yet, I can't remember. And we realized that our children were going to be exposed to things that we wouldn't necessarily control. And we're just talking the email, right? 10 years ago, we're 20, that's just email. And, put together a program more for parents and a little bit for teachers, but to get into the school district, to help parents understand your child's behavior when they're on the computer. And back then it would be, you walk into the room and they shut the window down. And I'm thinking, okay, the project's really archaic because technology just whoa goes. But now my freshman in high school is on things I don't even know what it is. Snap, and that's like instant message and it goes away. I had to look up, I write it down, IMHO. Does anyone know what IMHO means? The young people do. I mean, it's like, what is, I mean, I was reading something, what is that? So I Googled it. But it shows maybe not, again, that growth personally, but also how rapidly change is happening, and how do we as leaders, parents, keep up with it? And I don't have an answer for that. I mean, it's the access to information, the access our children have to each other around the world is there. And how do we protect them, keep them smart? This really was our project, but again, just at this art, I think we still had floppy disks then.
To be honest, I really struggled in my LGM experience. At the time, I was probably recently divorced by about a year, had 2 young kids, and I was the only woman of color in my class. And I really felt like people didn't know how to relate to me, and it was a very isolating experience. And when we got to projects, I felt really disappointed because out of all the things we had seen, going to the jail, the schools, it didn't feel like the people in the class, from my perspective, had really translated what some of the deep issues were in our community, and that the projects for me really seemed, and this sounds judgmental, and I probably am being, but it just seemed like to me like the projects just were fluff, and it wasn't attacking any of the real issues that we had seen. And I kind of felt like we were going to jump off some building and be Superman and Superwoman and really help the least of these. But the projects really seemed to be upper echelon projects. And I was really disappointed about that.
Do you think that's because people wanted to pick something that was safe and relatively simple, or do you think there's a deeper issue there?
I think it was a deeper issue there. I think I didn't feel like as a collective we had been deeply moved by what we saw. I think we saw some things like the jail and heard the statistics, and it was like, but let's do this project. This is nice. This is, and it just disappointed me.
To what extent do you think that reflects the way the community as a whole is reacting to, unappealing, difficult, negative information and facts?
I think it was a good way. I think it reflected the Madison community. I'm a lifelong Madisonian, and I think it reflected the larger community in many ways. It's like my brother wrote an article once, The Tale of Two Cities, and really describing the two Madisons. Maybe there's 3, but that's kind of the impression that I left with.
Quick question for you. What was one of the specific items that you felt should have been dealt with, and how would you have dealt with it?
Of many, I think, like I said, the thing that really stuck out to me was the 3rd grade reading levels. Looking at the incarceration and going from 14 years ago and looking at where mass incarceration of Black men is right now, 50-50 chance of a Black man being in prison in this county. To me, looking at the issue before I heard that, I thought you have to look at poverty, you have to look at homelessness, you have to look at all these things. But with that, I said, well, I can't fix that, I can't change those things, but I can teach a kid to read. So I would have wanted to do a project around reading, because then you knew that this was going to have a direct benefit to that. And so to me, that would have been an apple I wanted to bite.
Maybe that should be in the class of 21.
Of the topics, I've been trying to kind of look over past topics, and of all the topics selected throughout the 20 years, reading is the #1 theme around which projects have been designed. Some of them look similar to each other, some of them are way out there, and some of them are things that you see around. But the environment, reading, and then the 3rd is mentoring, kind of in various forms.
I will add something that's not directly related, but talking about the common topics, and we're trying to change the world through some of these things. I think the takeaway for the whole LGM 9 class was that while they all thought that their projects were important and were now I've got a tremendous awareness of how Madison and Dane County already supports many of these needs, and the takeaway was now we just have to think of a way to leverage that and work better together, because there are a lot of disparate, disjointed efforts going on that aren't creating the change that could occur if there were more coordination across the community. So I think a lot of people really, really did feel that they were doing good work, but then they had this epiphany that a lot of other things are going on that are equally good and can be made better.
So to what extent did others of you, or have others of you since LGM, noticed opportunities to connect the dots, as Annette is suggesting, to align efforts? You know, there isn't a wrong choice in terms of a project, but there is a wrong choice maybe in terms of the different directions everybody's going in. So anybody want to share some opportunity that they have taken advantage of to connect the dots as a result of the broader picture LGM provided for you?
I would jump in on that. I mentioned the Twin Lakes Alliance that I'm involved in. I saw that early on as an opportunity to bring together disparate groups, city, county, state, that weren't getting along or weren't tackling the solutions. Everybody in Madison likes to talk about what the problems are, and this was a group that was starting to focus on solutions, and it was like nothing I had seen before in conversations that I've had, whether it's about diversity or education or left-right politics or whatever. This was an opportunity where people were actually shutting up, looking at the data, coming up with a plan, and raising the money and working toward a solution. So I like the way that you frame that in terms of an epiphany, and I do think maybe that some of the LGM experiences that I had in the building of my own personal confidence and leadership, maybe I was able to see that as an opportunity because I, hadn't seen it in so many other places.
Our LGM group actually spent the night in the jail. So before the public safety building opened, they said that we'd spend the night in jail. And Omega School's been doing programming in the jail, so I said I know everything about it. But once we were in the cell, and they locked us in their pods, and even though we knew we were getting out later that day, I could see the dread in the rest of our classmates. I could see, and as the time, I usually go to bed around 10 o'clock, and we were all still up at 10:30, we were all still up at 11, 11:30 we were still out talking, and it was all this nervous energy because we were totally captive, and we didn't know, even though we knew we were getting out, we didn't know, our minds didn't know we were going to get out. And it just helped me kind of reflect on, once as an outsider, you see the problems, but until you have to grapple with both the emotional and get beyond the intellectual issues, it's scary out there. We live privileged lives, and we don't see the struggles that other people see on a daily basis. Even though I have an opportunity to hear them every day, I still don't always are compassionate and as understanding as I need to.
I want to say that, and again, 20 years later, who remembers anything? But it's interesting that we're talking about the projects, because from my vague recollections, I don't remember that the projects were that important. I mean, we did projects, and I remember the process. I think we worked with the volunteer center, and we were trying to get some volunteer database. I don't remember. I remember going through the process, as I remember going through the process for the overall LGM experience. And that was, as I said, I've done other leadership programs, and I have 20 more years of experience working in community development and community engagement. That was the first time I started to think about the complexity of the issues that we all face locally and globally. And it's interesting to me right now how much we're using the word solution because what I think I've come to, because what informs my work in community development now is that there isn't a solution to a problem. There are many different partners and issues and global forces at work that affect people on the local level, and the only way to solve them, and I don't even want to use that word because there's not a solution, is for all of us to realize that we're all part of that effort. As Kathleen said, you know, it's up to you guys to take this on, it's not my thing. So LGM was kind of launched me into even thinking about the work that I did in the arts as a part of that bigger community, blah, blah. But I don't, I try not to use the word solution because I just think that, you know, you can say mission accomplished after 3 months in Iraq and then 10 years later you're still there. So we should all not fool ourselves that there is a solution to a problem. But of course, as Americans, we all want to solve a problem right now. So I guess, I mean, in terms of LGM helping me think about that, that was a good launch pad. And I think that LGM is a good platform, has been always, and can continue to be even bigger, a good platform for helping the community deal with these issues.
And I went back to my organization and started a reading initiative and continue to bring it up. Actually, this came up at a meeting recently. So that's one way I said that information to users.
Really remember when we first started our group project doing the magazine cover or the newspaper cover where we had to sort of dream big, like what would Madison look like in 20 years. And I also felt somewhat isolated at that time because I suddenly realized that I was the only person on my project team that didn't play golf. And and that's another message that's definitely resonated with me over I should learn to play golf, but more importantly, other people should unlearn golf and maybe do work in places other than the golf course. Because my whole team was like, oh, we should go play golf and we should go do this. And I think it was interesting because I had this like passion, this drive, like, oh, I want to help Fresh Start, I want to help Fresh Start, I want to get kids jobs, that's what I want to do. And you know, we were doing the Dream Big exercise, and one of my team members said, we should say in 20 years we're going to get 200,000 jobs for people in Madison, or you know, some large number. And I remember saying, like, how about one? How about just one? How about one this year? Just one job for one person. And I remember having that conversation, and I think it was at that time, through that experience, I realized that it wasn't really like so many of us are saying, it wasn't the project, it was sort of the small relationships that were happening on the team. Because my team eventually came to Fresh Start, and I remember there was one woman who was terrified to come. I mean, this was a huge step for her to walk into an organization like that, and she did, and she changed because of it, and I think that sort of changed us all. And I still love play golf.
Yes. Speaking as a nonprofit person in this whole group, I completely understand. It's like, wow, this is a whole culture that I do not interact with, and
but I think
they're all nice people.
That was really good for me though, because I was a little terrified at first, because when I looked at the list, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one, and my car is really beat up, and oh no. I was intimidated, but it was so good for me to step out of that and be like, people do care about these issues if we give them the chance to develop that awareness.
When I think about, you know, my experience at LGM8, you know, a lot of what everybody is saying around the table really resonates on so many different levels for different reasons.
I would say that going through LGM is complicated because there's sort of what you're experiencing right at the moment, and then there's what you're experiencing along the way, and then there's sort of the experience after the experience. And I think that the greatest benefit that I got, and I think when I talked to my peers who were in LGM, is that it was transformational, but it was transformational in different ways for different people. And I think what I come to understand is it really pushed us. We were really uncomfortable. You were either uncomfortable when you were on the challenge course, you were uncomfortable when you were trying to figure out the projects. I mean, my personal experience with the projects is I thought I was in high school all over again. You know, it was like a popularity contest and who was going to connect with whom, because some people already had relationships and then there were some people who didn't. I mean, all of that stuff makes you feel uncomfortable. Even the topics each month were uncomfortable. I I know we keep talking about the jail. I was pregnant at the time and I just bawled, and I just couldn't even handle the whole process because my emotional barriers were low just because I had other hormones going on. And, I guess my reflection would be is that it really is the process. A leadership program is to challenge you, to get you to think to get you to think about what's going on. And I think that LGM did that. And I agree that there were some projects that were super lame, but then there were some projects that were really awesome too. And if you look at the overall collective of what LGM has done, I think that it has accomplished what it set out to do. And not every leader is an out loud leader. There are so many leaders that are quiet and just are doing their thing quietly behind the scenes, just doing a meeting program, So, to me, I think that, LGM is complicated. It's hard to put on a fantastic and have everyone feel awesome experience. But I think what's more important is how did you feel as you went through the process? Because those moments when we all felt vulnerable, that was when we were supposed to be paying attention, because we're feeling vulnerable for a reason, and it has more to do with us than what was going on outside. And I think that reflection is what improves us as leaders, I think. So
I'd say though that I'm coming to conclude it is more about process and product, but I think there also has to be this awareness then that can seem slightly self-indulgent in terms of the community partners that we ask to work with us on these projects and the amount of time that goes into it. And what, I just recall my project, we tried to beautify the Overture construction site, and we were in meetings with George Austin, and I think, and was that the best use of his time? But he was willing to do it. And great in process, and you learn how to work as a team, and set goals and so forth. But I think there has to be that larger awareness of what are we asking of each other's time, and what are we asking of community members' time as we go through this enlightening process.
Well, do the community members and the funders of the program understand that? Have we helped them understand that the impact, the value, the outcome of LGM is something that grows over time? And maybe that's a segue at some point in the discussion to how do we leverage this, and where do we go next with the public awareness and the image, the branding of LGM?
So let's do two more comments on this, Shiva, and then Dora. I know both of you are trying to chime in.
So I was going to go back to connecting the dots, and for me, I did really connect the dots. I would say LGM was probably the moment where I kind of thought I can continue doing the things that I'm doing, or I can run for city council and connect some dots. Although there are days I definitely feel we don't connect any dots. So I think as far as transformation, really thinking about the potentials and being able to take the next step, to me, it did that for me. The other thing I think that it did is that on a personal level, I think it was a big challenge. Because the story that I told you at the beginning was because the end of it was a very different story, and I think it made me, it made us really all internalize a bit of what was going on and why we were reacting, both myself and others, the way we were acting and reacting, and it built really long-lasting friendships and relationships. I think the beauty of it was that it wasn't, other groups you tend to have kind of the choir present, and here you didn't. So, for example, I had been to the race relations study circles, right? And so, but the people that signed up for the race relations study circles were self-selecting to be in those groups. So it wasn't like we weren't really challenging each other. We were actually talking about our own challenges in that group. So this was a different thing because a lot of companies, and I think they were just told you need to go. So it's good, I think, in the fact that there is not that self-selection of I'm really interested in X or Y, but you're there and you have to make the best out of that year.
So for LGM 1, some of us were invited to apply. And I clearly remember being very honored to be asked, and by the way, Alex was in my class
Yes.
in LGM 1, and that was the class that had 3 people of color, Art Shigoni, Alex, and Dora. By purpose, it was set up in that manner. And I remember talking to a colleague of mine in the nonprofit world to help me with the application because it was like, oh my God, this is such a big deal. And he said to me, well, don't worry, Dora. You're a woman, you're Hispanic, of course you're going to get in. I stopped being his friend. He doesn't know that I stopped being his friend. But so that sort of piece, you know, and that's the reality of the world that we live in today. It's those people. So what have we personally done? 20 years ago, race was not a big issue. Poverty was not the issue that it is today. The extremes is not the reality that it is today. And I challenge us all. What are we doing within our own organizations around those issues? Because we're not, because it's just easier. The second piece is, you know, most of us belong to a lot of different organizations. I think Steve is wearing the same logo I'm wearing underneath here, right? Rotary? In Rotary, when we ask, when somebody sees the pin, says, oh, you're part of that group? Oh, okay. And it doesn't matter that you're from the nonprofit world. It doesn't matter that you're of a different race, age, gender, whatnot. You have that bond immediately. That's the bond that I have with a good chunk of people from LGM1. That if I pick up the phone and I say, I need this, got it, done. Yes, because that's the sort of bond that I was able to build with some folks. And on the other hand, they can call me and say, okay, this is a stupid question, but, and then I can say, yeah, okay, and we can talk about those race relations that wouldn't have happened otherwise. There's not that same connection with LGM, different classes. There really isn't. That's nice, you went to LGM, so somehow,
Need a pen.
I don't know that we need a pen, but I think that an understanding that we belong to a fraternity, sorority kind of an organization where it should be a given that if I call David and I ask David for something and I say, hey David, I don't know him, I'm from LGM 1, and we share a little something, I have no idea what David does. I say, hey, could you help me with this? Because I looked in my Rolodex and David does accounting and I need an accountant for something. That doesn't happen. So, sorry.
Well, that is a great, I think, segue into the next section because I would like to talk about that. I think that this network of people, I mean, you know, how fabulous would it be if we had this resource available? We have these LGM people, these people who are committed and passionate, like you've all just spoke about, and there are these issues that need to be dealt with. Let's drop it on the table, and here, these are the people to figure it out, right? How do we get to a point where this is a network that is kind of a machine for attacking, you know, whatever it is that needs to be attacked, and we have the people who are not afraid. They are not, you know, it doesn't matter that they feel vulnerable. It doesn't matter that they are, you know, this political affiliation or the other. What would it take for that to be the case?
We might start by taking it beyond the traditional, this is not a slam on the alumni group because we're all part of that group, but the traditional alumni approach seems to be focused, although they're changing that recently, but for the first few years it was focused on the social aspect of networking. And that's fine, that's a good first step, but maybe we could more seriously focus on some of these substantive issues and connecting the dots. I think Dora put it very well when she said, and she was suggesting it too, we can have impact individually within our organizations, maybe even in a small way, but that's a place to start. And then maybe there's a role for the alumni group in terms of helping to move some of these big rocks up the hill as a network or as a community.
Yeah, I think two key takeaways from the initial discussion was that one, the process helps us connect with each other. It's kind of a proving ground. It helps us relate. It gives us a connection in our class to pick up the phone and call each other, as you're suggesting. I do think that classes do kind of divide us. Some other points were that some of the projects weren't always the most effective. I think it's more rewarding to work on a project that is effective and long-lasting. You're still feeling good about that today because you made a difference. I think once you're in the alumni and you've made connections in your own class and you start to make them outside of your class, it's a perfect opportunity to find actual real projects in the community that need real people that are really well connected. I mean, everyone is extremely well connected in this room. Where I'd be hard pressed to think that if we had a major project and needed a solution within our collective class of 20 classes, we could have an all-star team of people like it almost immediately to handle any major issue. There's so much reach. And I think taking a step past alumni social events, you're automatically have a social networking opportunity if you're working on a project because you're working together on something. You're going to probably hang out after the project's over for the day. But I think applying everyone's collective effort to real projects in need that really need progressive solutions. Maybe there's an initial phase, then the second phase, and you keep setting the bar higher to improve something. So that there's never that end point where you've arrived. Because I agree, if you think you've arrived, that's when you start to go down. You're either constantly improving something, or you're going back down the other side. So I really think that the connections we make applied to really deserving projects would be a phenomenal way to apply ourselves afterwards. Because after you graduate, it's kind of like, well, what now? What do I do now? And I would love to see a list of projects that maybe we volunteer to say, hey, I am passionate about that. I'm glad someone brought up that project need in the city because I want to jump in on that one. I've got experience, I've got connections, I can help there. Maybe there could be some kind of database of here are the projects I need right now. Please apply to help if you could.
In addition to having opportunities to work together on projects, what we all really appreciated were the educational sessions, and to the extent that there might be opportunities for continued education. I was trying to remember, a year or two ago, there was a luncheon that, it was a forum of the school board candidates, and was that at LGM?
Yes.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And I remember thinking, oh, I wish we had more of these to just sort of recreate on a mini level the experience of exposure to leaders and the opportunity to really go in depth on some issues.
I guess I want to capitalize on that because I thought what was really great about LGM were the topics, and I think and they were really unique. I mean, our class didn't get to spend the night in a jail, but I have to agree with Oscar that really sometimes getting to the deeper root of an issue is really having an opportunity to really spend some time in it.